Okay, we got the inflation numbers. The inflation numbers were exactly what we expected. As you can see, 4.2% year on year for CPI. That's as expected, 4.2%. The core CPI, which removes food and energy, is on 2.9%. So what we're basically saying here is inflation is at 4.2%, which is a long way away from the Fed's 2% inflation target, mainly though because of food and energy, and that's obviously because of the war. And I think what we need to discuss is what the implications are of this. And the reason why I asked or say that we should discuss what the implications are of this is there are a couple of things that you need to pay attention to. The first thing is inflation is very, very much on a clear uptrend. If you look at the last three readings that we had, we started off here at about 2.4%. That was before the war. But then we moved to here at 3.3%, then 3.8%, and now 4.2%. That's not the scary part. I'll talk to you about the scary part because it does get a little bit scarier than that. And that's probably what's causing, get this, it's been Bitcoin's worst week since the FTX collapse. Believe it or not, I got this from a Bloomberg article, which says, Bitcoin's worst week since the FTX crash signals, and there's probably more pain ahead. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what the real scary part about inflation is. We're going to talk about the World Cup soccer, or football or soccer, whatever you call it, where you come from today. We're going to talk about a whole lot of things right here today. It's a special inflation day show, so happy CPI day if you celebrate. Let's get the show on the road, ladies and gents. GM fellas, GM. Wife changing money. I see you guys. Hans, I see you. Crypto Healthy, I see you. Where is Joanne Perry? We cannot start the show without Joanne Perry. Anyway, guys, welcome. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of the show. We did get the CPI reading. The CPI reading was exactly as we expected. I guess we had bad expectations because we were expecting 4.2%. The entire market was expecting 4.2%. They got 4.2%. As I mentioned, the core CPI does look a bit better. It's at 2.9%. Core CPI, for those of you who don't know, removes food and removes energy, basically. And so that is coming in at 2.9%. Both of them above the Fed's inflation rate. Now, this is where it gets a lot scarier, right? You remember that the PPI came in at 6%. So the last PPI reading shot up from 4.3% to 6%. That's the producer price index. That number comes out tomorrow, right? So tomorrow we get CPI. What we know about CPI and PPI is we know that CPI actually tracks PPI. So in other words, CPI eventually goes up to where PPI is, which kind of makes sense because if you're taking production price index, which is what the producers are paying, eventually that does filter in to what the consumers are paying, right? And so that number is at 6%. The CPI is tracking it exactly as it's supposed to be tracking in order to get towards 6%. The other scary thing is if you look at this number over here, this is the highest number we've had since May 2023. This is the highest inflation reading we had since May 2023. The only difference between May 2023 and today is that this was on the way up and this was on the way down, and this is actually on the way up. You can see that the inflation numbers went up because of COVID. You can see that over here. And in fact, the last time that the inflation numbers actually went up to this level on the way up was actually in May 2021, which is as a result of all the COVID printing and all the short supplies that were there around COVID. So the PPI is scary. Where it gets scarier is if you look at what Morgan Stanley actually published. And what they did was they took a fractal of CPI now versus the 70s now. The 70s was a very, very, very scary time for CPI and for PPI. And they had this like double CPI header. One was the COVID CPI over here, and now they're saying this is the double header, which brings us into 1970s style. Now, in the 1970s, they raised interest rates to 20%. I kid you not. They raised interest rates to 20% to try and kill the inflation. And, that was a catastrophic time for markets. So let's hope that this doesn't happen. We know what's causing this. What's causing this is the oil price. The good thing, or the war and the oil price, the good thing about the war and the oil price, well, you say good thing, not really good thing, but the markets are not responding to the headlines anymore. So if you look at the oil price today, the oil price is at $91. And as you can see, it's come down. It's come down quite a bit from the $115 or $116 or whatever it was at. And it started to come down. And the markets are not responding. The reason why I said the markets are not responding, yesterday or the day before, we got a US military helicopter which was shot down allegedly by Iranians. Trump said that they would retaliate. At the same time, Trump's come out guns blazing here, and he's basically said Iran's military is a complete and total mess. Much of it, like their Navy and Air Force, doesn't even exist anymore. They've been completely defeated. Iran is all talk and no action. The bully of the Middle East is dead. They've taken too long to negotiate a deal that would have been great for them. Now they have to pay the price. So he's now threatening to get Iran to actually start paying the price. And this is from Kabisi. It says President Trump is considering ordering the US to begin targeting Iranian power plants and bridges. So you're seeing all these threats. We know they are threats, because I can't imagine that Trump hits power plants which will affect the Iranian people. I know he wants to get rid of the leadership, but to hit the power plants actually affects the people. So I think these are all laced threats to get people to actually listen to him. And here the Hormuzler says, breaking, US launches a third wave of strikes on Iran with massive fleet of US fighter jets now airborne across western Iran. So it looks like the escalations, as I said, the good thing is that the escalations aren't causing the oil price to go up. For now, the oil price remains under $90 a barrel, which kind of, for me, oil is the truth. In fact, any market is the truth, because it's money where your mouth is time when you're talking about markets. And I think if there was real escalation in the Middle East, the oil price would basically shoot up, and it's not shooting up. Be that as it may, even if you take the oil price increase for the last, I don't know, let's say it started on the 28th of Feb, and you take the oil price increase for the last, here we go, for the last, how many days is that? That is 104 days. So if you take the oil price increase for the last 104 days, that inflation is filtering into the stores and into the CPI index. The problem is that even if they solve the war now and oil comes back down to the 70s or 80s, the problem is that to get the oil system working again, to repair all the damages, takes at least 6 months, which takes us all the way into the midterm election. So I think where we're at now is that I think there's no chance that Trump actually gets this resolved by the war, by the midterm elections. And there's massive implications that. Yesterday, I don't know if you guys saw this, ask Crips to put a link to the Crypto Insider video, But yesterday I actually interviewed Arthur Hayes. You have to listen to that video. We'll put a link below to the Arthur Hayes video. He tells you why he's out of markets, and a lot of it has to basically do with the oil price. So the market's not responding. I would hate to be Kevin Warsh. Remember, he comes out next week, Wednesday. We're going to be here with you next week, Wednesday. First FOMC with Kevin Warsh. He's not going to increase rates. He's not going to reduce rates. That's pretty much given. But we need to understand whether he's going to be hawkish or dovish. We need to understand how he sees inflation. Last I heard, but again, you can't really take this at face value, because a lot of these publications are quoting him from previous, from speeches that he said years ago, etc., etc. What I want to know is what he's going to come out and say. What I want to hear is what he's going to come out and say. I think he's going to say that we're measuring inflation the wrong way, that we're using lagging indicators, etc., etc. Hardest, what's wrong? So I think he's going to say that we're measuring inflation the wrong way and we're measuring the data the wrong way, because if you need to make a policy move and the data doesn't support the policy move, then you basically just have to blame the data and say, look, the data is wrong, my data sources are wrong. And I think that that's what he's going to basically do next week. So that's what I'm expecting from Kevin Warsh. I just need to get a tissue. I think that's what I'm expecting from Kevin Warsh. Let's see what happens. I must say, I would hate to be Kevin Warsh coming into an administration that basically expects you to reduce rates. Everyone expects you to reduce rates. You can't reduce rates because inflation is high, and worse yet, employment numbers. You saw the employment numbers next week. Anyway, it's a must. It's a must for you to watch this interview that I did with Arthur Hayes, because he breaks it down so amazingly. I'll leave a list below. Hardest, can we now have that list below? You've told you what?
I've told. I'm just waiting for it.
Fantastic, it's coming. All right. Let's talk about the next thing. I mean, it's a big week for markets. It's a massive week for markets this week. I know it doesn't feel like it when you look at the charts and literally just go to the charts. I know it doesn't feel like it's a massive week for markets. Let's just quickly look at the S&P 500, how the US market actually opened. I think it opened pretty much flat. Yeah, pretty much flat, slightly down. But it's a massive week for markets. And the reason why it's such a big week for markets is because it's the week of the SpaceX launch. On Friday, we have the biggest IPO of all time. And everybody is on tenterhooks waiting to see what's going to happen. Is this going to steal liquidity from the markets? How are the market's going to respond? This is unprecedented. This is 3 to 4 times bigger than the previous biggest IPO. And so we are now everyone is basically watching this IPO. Right now, SpaceX coming out at a 1.6 trillion valuation, which is more or less how they're pitching it in the public race. So they're talking about 135 a share. The shares are now trading at 162 per share. If you want shares, tell them to add in that Bybit thing. If you want shares, let me show you something. You can actually get, if you got a Bybit account, you can actually get SpaceX shares. They've got an allocation, so not a guaranteed allocation, but Bybit actually have a here we go. Bybit actually have a section where you can, if you have a Bybit account, you've got 1 day to basically sign up, and then you can actually subscribe for shares. So at $135, I would, if I were you, I would take some of this, because if you can get SpaceX shares at $135, it's almost guaranteed that it's going to go up. That's one way that you can get exposure into the SpaceX IPO. Here, if you get exposure, you're going to get exposure at $135 a share. We will leave a link to it below. By the end of the show, I'll show you exactly where that link is. If you don't want to actually buy the shares, but you want to trade the shares, you can trade them on variational. If you trade them on variational, basically what happens is you earn airdrop points. So you can go and trade them on leverage here, and you actually earn airdrop points. Now, a lot of our community have been killing it with the airdrop points. If you sign up, and I'll show you here where a lot of our community. So if you sign up, you can trade SpaceX pre-IPO. If you use the code Omni right now, there's your code OmniRun. You get a 15% points kicker. If you're in the United States, it's going to block you, but if you have a VPN, it will not block you. So you need to use a VPN, and you don't tell them I told you that. Anyway, sorry, as I was saying, you can actually trade. So if you want exposure to the SpaceX IPO, one, go to Bybit, open an account on Bybit. There will be a link below. You've got to use the link below. Otherwise, they're not going to open an allocation for you. We've got an allocation here. You subscribe for as much as you want, etc., etc. If you get them, you'll get them for more or less. They call it an indicative price of $135. If you just want to trade the perpetuals, you can trade the perpetuals now on variational. Anyway, let's go back to it. It's a big week for markets. Markets are extremely nervous. The reason why markets are so nervous is as follows. You know, like you've seen those images of like energy, and how when energy gets hot, the atoms start to rotate ferociously around one another. Right. That's exactly how markets are. As markets basically go up, the energy starts to get crazy, right? Like, so you can imagine that when markets start moving, the energy is very, very low, because markets effectively are energy. They're just monetary energy, right? And energy has a certain direction, and it has a certain momentum. And if you think about it, the markets right now, specifically stock markets, are very, very, very heated, which means that at the top of the markets, the energy is very, 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 very crazy. The problem with that is that, you know, when that explodes or when that breaks down, then the breakdown is quite crazy. And that's exactly what's happening in markets now. Markets are getting pretty nervous. They're getting nervous about AI. They're getting nervous about SpaceX sucking out liquidity from AI. And so what you're seeing is that the AI proxy markets around the world are actually taking hit. The Kospi, I mean, you could say taking hit. It's down 11.63% in the last, since Friday the 20th, no, the high was 2nd of June. So since the 2nd of June, this market's down 11.63%. The Nikkei, which is less AI heavy, I'll be honest, but still an AI, I mean, most markets now are AI driven. That's down 6%. Even the commodities are basically down. So you're seeing the AI bid stealing money from the commodities. Just look at gold. Most people aren't paying attention to the fact that gold is down 26% already, which is quite big. Silver is down a lot. And not only is it down a lot, silver is now below the 200-day moving average. So if you look at the 200-day moving average for silver, silver's down 45% from the top, and it is now below the 200-day moving average, which is quite a critical key level for silver. So yes, Bitcoin has been the hardest hit out of all of them, but if you look at world markets are taking an absolute hit. The Nasdaq also slightly down. Let's quickly just go to the Nasdaq. Again, all this is, a lot of it is people getting scared because of SpaceX, or people actually, remember there's a $75 billion IPO, which means that $75 billion has to come from somewhere. And I think that that's one of the things that's actually happening here. The tricky thing is, So this is now down. The Nasdaq's about down 6%. Nothing critical. It's back down to levels of May. So it's gone back down a month. We've rewinded a month, not even. The critical thing, the critical thing here is that they're going to add SpaceX into the Nasdaq almost immediately. And if you know anything about how indices work, effectively when SpaceX hits the Nasdaq, it means that all the Nasdaq tracking funds, and there's many. I mean, one of them is this QQQ ETF. Let me show it to you here. So this is just to give an idea. This is the QQQ ETF. It's, I think, the de facto Nasdaq ETF. I mean, there's many others. There's the Nasdaq E-minis and whatever else, but that's the QQQ. Now, if you look at the constituents of the QQQ, so let's quickly just go to chat, and let us quickly just let's just quickly go here and say, what are the stocks in the QQQ and what weighting? God, I made a spelling mistake, but my chat GPT knows me well enough to know that I'm dyslexic. I'm not dyslexic, I just can't type properly. Okay, so that is the components of what makes up the QQQ. NVIDIA makes up 8.5%, Apple makes up 7.4%, Microsoft makes up 5.1% of the QQQ. Now, I'm going to ask ChatGPT something else. Can you make a table to show me and my delighted and my amazing community what the allocations would look like when SpaceX is added, and assume a market cap of $2 trillion. We'll just say $2 trillion for SpaceX. Okay. Now let's see what happens here. I want to show you, because I think this, if ChatGPT is smart enough to make us a table, because it's searching the web, I should actually use my Clawbot for this. Okay, so you see what happens here is, if SpaceX comes into the index, they would have to sell 0.4%, 5% of their NVIDIA, right? So that they could buy SpaceX. So SpaceX would make up 3.8% of the index. They would have to sell some Apple. They would have to sell some Microsoft, and they would have to use those funds to buy up SpaceX, so that SpaceX would now make up 3.8% of the portfolio, and that's just one index tracking fund. Okay. Now let's quickly just for fun ask how much money is in. I spell really badly. Is in the QQQ today. $480 billion. Okay, so just think that like there's going to be sales of 12 or 13 billion dollars of the top stocks that we actually spoke about here. Okay, so can you now populate the table? Hold on, do you actually need researchers now? Because you can actually just do everything on ChatGPT. Can you now populate the table with the dollar amount that would need to be sold to accommodate SpaceX? Okay, so look, what it says is there's going to be $1.5 billion of NVIDIA sold. There's going to be $1.3 billion of Apple sold. There's going to be $1 billion worth of Microsoft sold. All this has to be absorbed by the market, right? And so that's maybe why the markets are starting to cool down. Now take the sum total of all the Nasdaq tracking funds that you know, and make a similar table. And make a similar table. Let's see. At some point, we're going to max ChatGPT, and then we should probably move to Fable. We're going to talk about Fable in a second. This gets interesting. They're probably okay. Here we go. According to the Nasdaq's own data, there's approximately $1.4 trillion tracking Nasdaq 100 ecosystem today. That includes ETFs, mutual funds, institutional mandates, etc., etc. So let's add them both. So they're talking about $4.5 billion of Nvidia to be sold, $3.8 billion of Apple to be sold, $2.7 billion worth of Microsoft. Now remember, this has to happen because these are index tracking funds, and either you're included in the index or you're not included in the index. So what's going to probably happen? SpaceX is probably going to go up. These are all probably going to go down because these sales are going to hit the markets when it's added to the index. You understand how this works, right? Okay, good. That means that you should probably go to Bybit and try and get yourself some shares at 135. I'm going to do it straight after the show because if you can get shares at 135, I think take as many as you can. If not, you can trade it on leverage here. I'd be careful. 161 is not the best price, but if you can get it close to, if at any point you can get it at 135 or somewhere around 135, you go all in because you know that the index funds have to buy. They have to buy, basically. So we know that's going to happen. Anyway, so that is our SpaceX trade. Thank you, ChatGPT. By the way, ChatGPT is not as good as Fable. We'll talk about Fable in a couple of seconds. So world markets, all anticipating the SpaceX thing. They're all anticipating Nvidia taking hit and Apple taking hit and Microsoft taking hit and all these things happening. That's pretty much what's happening. In the meantime, Bitcoin's also taking hit. Bitcoin's worst week since the FTX crash. I mean, you could say the worst week, but the metric which they use is they use the dollar decline. So they use the dollar decline. The thing is, when you look at this week over here, the dollar decline was from, let's actually go to the actual data. I'm just showing you how you shouldn't believe the headlines because the headlines are a little bit misleading. Yes, I mean, technically it is the worst week. This was the FTX collapse over here. And if you look at the week, so we went down, that's the week that they're talking about. And we went down that week $5,000. But at that time, $5,000 was 24% of the price. This week, they're kind of saying, look, we went down much more than $5,000. We went down like $10,000 or $7,000. So yes, technically it is the worst week if you just look at the dollar amount. We went down $10,000, right? But as a percentage, we only went down 14%. So it's not the most sore week. It's just the worst week. At the same time, because price, if you look at the ETF balances, this is actually a very scary chart. Well, not scary. It's a very, what's the word? Not ironic. I mean, can we use the word cuck? It's a shit chart. I mean, when I say it's a shit chart, if you look at the levels that we are on this chart, now this chart, just so you know, this is the US dollar balance of the Bitcoin ETF. So it's a function of how many Bitcoin they've bought and the increase in the price of Bitcoin. Because it's not the number of Bitcoin in the ETFs. This is the number of Bitcoin. You see, again, I don't know if we actually need researchers anymore. I just want to see if I can do this. How many Bitcoin were in the IBIT or in the total Bitcoin ETFs on the week. Now I want to actually take you to the week because this is the week of Trump coming into power. So this is the week of the 5th of November. So week 5 November. Okay, there was a total of, we were at the same levels. We're at the same levels now as the week of 8 November, which is, okay, the total is $78 billion, and now there's $78 billion. So we've round tripped the entire Trump trade. But let's actually just see how many Bitcoin were there. How many Bitcoin were total Bitcoin ETFs on the week of 5 November 2024 versus today? My researcher is saying you need to type faster to replace the researchers. So week 5 November, there were 1 million Bitcoin. Today, there's 1.28 million Bitcoin. So yes, the ETFs are holding about 20% more Bitcoin. I mean, can we just talk about this? Do we actually need researchers? I mean, we're doing this all on ChatGPT. Tune in tomorrow where you can watch Run play with his ChatGPT and give you lots of valuable information. Tune in tomorrow. So anyway, so we've round trip. Yes, the ETFs have got 20% more Bitcoin, but in terms of the value in the ETFs, she says, I just need to. If I install Whisper is when you can talk to the ChatGPT basically, and I have ChatGPT. No, if I have the new model. Did you guys see they launched a new model yesterday? It's called Fable. What is Fable? Fable is the new Anthropic model, right? Now, the new Anthropic model is actually called Mythos. But they launched a consumer, because their whole marketing stunt, and maybe it's actually true, is that Mythos is so dangerous that if it gets into the hands of hackers, they're going to basically be able to hack anything, right? That's basically how dangerous Mythos is. They're going to be able to crack vulnerabilities in websites, in banks, in everything else. And so everyone's been like petrified, but also looking forward, because that's the marketing stunt, to using this. And so in the ultimate marketing stunt that you've ever seen in your life, they launched a Fable, just listen to this, is a state-of-the-art on nearly all tested benchmarks. So basically they launched a model which is, they described it as like we are actually allowed to launch this. In other words, like it's safe to launch. And they've put in a whole lot of guardrails that, for example, you can't crack cryptography with this, right? So this is the new model from Claude. It is amazing. It's quite dangerous for crypto. And I say, why do I say it's quite dangerous for crypto? Because the better these models get, the more vulnerabilities we will be able to find. Just like we found the potential vulnerability in Zcash, we found a lot of vulnerabilities and a lot of hacks since AI has actually started. So there is actually a discussion of, like, they're calling this Noah's Ark. And the Noah's Ark, the AI will be the flood. It will flush out all the animals, all the protocols that aren't good and the developers couldn't keep up. But the ones that are left are going to be like the real battle-tested protocols, right? And so, yes, this is a very scary time for AR, especially when they're launching Fable, which is actually Mythos, which is actually Fable, which is actually Mythos. You see now, I just want to say something. The researchers are mocking me here with I just want to show you the abuse that I'm taking here. So, yeah, I'll show you. The researchers are actually mocking me now because I said I could do their job without them, because I just realized that I could. I could actually do it. I can't even share the screen, but not fun playing all around by yourself. But just come and watch the show again tomorrow. We can click on ChatGPT together. Yeah, I think we need to carry on the show tomorrow. The reason why I think we need to carry on the show tomorrow is I actually have to go to the trading competition. Remember, I told you about the trading competition, the one on TradeStars? So I am actually playing. Oh, shit, but I'm short. You see, because I was here, I've been short, and the market's actually gone up. Now, what you can see is that my balance is 9. I started with 100,000. Remember, this is paper money. This is the Banter Cup. We're playing a tournament right now. The tournament goes on for another 3 hours and 4 minutes. It's like a poker-style trading competition. There's no money here. So, like, it's not like I'm playing with money here. I am trading though. So, I went short like an idiot. I actually got to close the short. I have to close it. Damn it. Okay, let me close the short. Although now I should probably, okay, I've closed it. You see, now the problem is that when you look at where I am on this table here, I'm down a lot. Actually, let's see where I am as a lead. I'm number 431. I'm going to swing long again. And I know I'm doing it the wrong way. I know I should probably, no, I don't know. I have to think about it. I can't do it while I'm on the show. Anyway, if you can't play this tournament. If you do want to play, there's a link to TradeStars below. Let's quickly just go here and let's just give you. If you do want to play, there's a link to trade. A lot of links. Number one, if you want to join TradeStars, you can't. No, you can't join at a table. I told Cribs you can't join at a table. It's too late. Okay. Variational, if you want to farm those points and trade SpaceX. If you want to get access to the Bybit IPO, do it here. One other little public service announcement, just for fun. Remember, it's the World Cup. Okay, so remember, it's the World Cup soccer that starts on Friday, on Thursday. On Thursday night is the World Cup soccer. We have our very own correspondent who is covering the World Cup. Her name is Kelly. Everyone, meet Kelly. Her name is Kelly Better. Okay, now, Kelly is going to keep you covered in her beautiful British accent.
Very carefully here. South Africa are walking into a trap against Mexico on Thursday. Opening night of the World Cup, Estadio Azteca, 87,000 screaming Mexicans, and Bafana have to walk out.
Okay, so she's going to cover all the games. She's going to give you guys, if you want to take bets, she'll give you some, like, I don't know, ideas around betting. If you want to follow her on Instagram, follow her. There's her Instagram and her X. Follow her on Instagram or TikTok over there. Let me know what you think of her. I mean, spoiler alert, she is AI. Okay, she's our AI influencer because it's very hard to find No, I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. Guys, I'll see you again tomorrow. I've got to go play in the trading competition. Until then, trade well, my friends.